Let's do this.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome, Debbie Carter, to the TJ podcast. For people who don't know, there'll be few and far between, but tell us who you are, your job title. Tell us a bit about you before we kick off.
Okay, well, my job title is Editor-in-Chief and of Training Journal, TJ. I've been in this role for quite a long time, and today is my final day.
It is your final day, and we're here to talk about that. So my first question, Debbie, what's different and what's the same about the TJ that you joined in the late 90s?
Well, I joined TJ actually in 2001, but I was part of the company that had TJ from the moment it was purchased from Marylebone Press, which was 1998, I think it was, that Fenman acquired it then. What's changed? Quite a lot's changed. Mainly, I mean, if you think of it today, now it's purely a digital project. At that time, it was a print-based magazine, and it had a very basic website, and it had an affiliated online moderated forum called UKHRD. I think it might have been one of the first in the UK, actually. It was one of the first sort of chat forums around. So that was the start. I mean, it's changed a lot in the intervening years because it changed name from Training Officer, which it was when we bought it, which was appropriate because nearly everybody who subscribed were either training managers or training officers. But we changed it because we thought it sounded a bit militaristic to TJ, to Training Journal, and then later it became TJ. So those are the main things I would say. I think the focus of the editorials changed a bit as well, because initially it was very practical how-to stuff for trainers. So it was very much focused on the training cycle. So needs analysis, design, delivery, assessment, evaluation. So a lot of the material that we covered was how to do those things, and also a lot of things around soft skills, but the focus was on training trainers. And then it gradually changed over the years, and now we are much more around giving trainers who are less trainers but more developers, business partners, coaches, talent, a whole raft of different job titles, to give them different types of skills, really. So it's changed quite dramatically.
So I don't want to talk, we're not going to talk too much about the sad times, but so the next question is, what's made you happiest working at TJ?
Oh, well, lots of things really. I think there are two main things that stand out really. The first is I really enjoyed doing the project we did from about 2005 for about 3 or 4 years called L&D 2020, which was because we'd seen these changes in title, almost job title of our readership. We realized that there were a lot of them not doing what they originally were, which was delivering training, which was a sort of transactional process in many ways. I remember talking to Don Taylor about, you know, this very question, and he said his first day as in a training department, he remembered going through the gates and the factory, all the offices were on one side and the training department was in a little shed in the corner. And that was very much really how training was 20 years ago. It was not embedded in the business. It just was an order taker for line managers, but that was clearly changing because we were getting titles like business partner and whatever. So we started to look at that, and we did a bit of forward scenario planning and what would it look like. And actually it was called L&D 2020, which is quite ironic really, given what's happened in 2020. But actually I think 2020 has been the tipping point that has actually made a lot of what we were talking about happen. So it's been forced on us by a pandemic, but we did say that, you know, learning was going to be very much driven by technology. and it's going to be around, understanding learners. So it's around neuroscience, psychology, well-being, all the things that people are talking about now. So so it was a very rewarding project. We also did a lot of focus groups around what was emerging, and that was a great way of actually touching base with our practitioners, because so often you're talking to contributors who are perhaps suppliers or thinkers, but not so much working within big organizations. So it was a great opportunity to get a sort of a look at what was happening there. So it was a very rewarding, and actually for me, I think it gave me an enormous insight into the industry and how individuals work within their different industries. So that was really great. The second thing I find great about working at TJ was actually the people. So not just my colleagues. I have some lovely colleagues. I've had so many over the years who have been marvelously supportive and kind. But actually looking at it from a bigger picture, as a permanent wheelchair user who has been in the world of work since late 1970s, it was really refreshing to go and work for Fenman and subsequent companies, and going out to events and meeting people in the industry, because they were so inclusive. I didn't feel like I didn't belong, whereas in a lot of organisations before that, it was very difficult to make your mark, because you couldn't join everything, because things were always very difficult, and maybe there wasn't the support around then that there is now. But for whatever reason, I think because HR and L&D tend to lead the inclusion and diversity agenda, they are probably more in tune with connecting with people than perhaps your average engineer in a radio factory or whatever. It's just that for me was quite an eye-opener, because then maybe the world generally has changed, but I don't think it has as much as I think it should have done. There are still big barriers to inclusion. So it was about that, but very much about feeling part of something. And L&D people made you feel extremely welcome. They're very generous with their time and their thoughts and their ideas. I suppose those are the two main things, John.
Yeah, this is not an excursionary plan, but I do agree. I think the L&D community are an incredibly generous and lovely bunch of people in the main. You look at kind of to kind of use a microcosm of, say, Twitter, for example, as to describe a bigger picture. If you look at the different sorts of tribes within a social network, and you've got film Twitter or football Twitter or whatever it is, people in L&D Twitter are really, really positive and encouraging and supportive. I think that's really good.
Yes, I think that's it, and I do think it's around they must gravitate, because they care about people, and it's really nice. I mean, I'd worked in the Legal Services Commission before that with solicitors and barristers, and they're all adversarial. So you just spent all your day, even with, I'm not talking about being disabled, but your whole day was spent, they weren't collaborative. They didn't want to listen. They just wanted to shout at why their client needed to have legal aid right there and then. And no matter what you said about how you couldn't do it because there were certain rules that meant you couldn't do it, they just would because that's their way of working generally.
Apologies to all the nice barristers out there, but
I
know what you mean.
Like that, but there were quite a few in the the early 80s who were, there were lovely ones as well, don't get me wrong, but a lot of your day was actually taken up but like any customers, it's a customer service environment almost, professional services. But sorry about that. You can edit that out if you like.
That's fine. It's your interview. Okay, next question. What would you do away with from the world of L&D? It could be a piece of terminology. It could be an entire area of the training industry if you want. What are you not a fan of so much?
Well, it would be very difficult to say that when I've just said how wonderful everybody within it is. But I don't think there's much I would change or get rid of. I do think that they love models and acronyms, and I sometimes find those a little bit, well, strained, tenuous at times. Particularly, you get articles come in, and it's the 17 Ps of coaching or whatever. I mean, that's an exaggeration, of course, but that type of thing. People like to shoehorn their ideas into something, get a nice word that they think it would. And I sometimes think it doesn't work. There are some that have become mainstream and work well. The GROW model from John Whitmore, SMART objectives, SWOT analysis, PEST analysis, all those sorts of things that are very useful acronyms. But, there's a lot out there that are not that good, really. But that's one of the things. The other thing I think is this resistance that it's not something to take away. It's something I'm a bit sorry about, is that everyone, all the websites, events that you go to in L&D, what we write about is talking about practitioners becoming much more business centric. And I think there are a proportion who are certainly making those moves, but there's still, I think, a large number of people who are much more tied to the pedagogy, if you like, than they are to what they're trying to achieve. And I think that's still something that needs to be worked on. And I hope that we can carry on making people see, yes, that understanding how people learn is vital, and understanding certain skills is vital, but the most important thing is knowing what your business is about, and giving your people the ability to, actually, to quote Brian Murphy from your interview the other day, when he talked about the vaccination program, that normally a vaccination program would take 10 to 15 years to complete, and they did it in 10 months. And that meant that they had to actually get people to unlearn all the things that they previously felt was the way you had to do it. And I think that's key, is the L&D people need to start really challenging the people in their organizations to let go of old stuff and embrace new ways of doing things. And actually, if we don't do that, and I think I still think that there's a large proportion of people out there still resistant to that.
Agreed. Obviously, Debbie, now we're going to stay in contact, and in various different ways. Maybe I'll even come and see you when we're allowed to do that. But
Yes,
for the purposes of again,
might be a long way off yet.
Yeah, true. But for the purposes of drama, here's my last question. Give me some words of wisdom to take forward into the darkness without you.
The darkness? You just told me about a new light you're getting. You're not going to be in the dark, are you?
I have got a new light. It's very exciting. It's a smart light though, so I need to, install the app and learn all that stuff. That's modern life problems. But
well, you'll have to blog about it or something just to keep us informed.
I will, definitely.
Anyhow, you're not going to be alone, are you? Because you've got this vast network of people who would support you. As I said before, the industry is incredibly generous. I know you're working on your own, but reach out to people who know, ask for help, ask for support, and I know you would get it. I'm not going anywhere anyhow, so I'm still around. I know I'm in my 60s, but I'm not pegged it yet. So if you've got any questions, come and talk to me. I'm happy to be a sounding board. You've got Joe again, who's a marvelous resource, and Kate. You are now omnipotent, as Joe said. You're the glue that holds it all together. And I recruited you 4 years ago because I knew you had the talent that we needed for the future. And I know you're a safe pair of hands. I've not got any doubt on that score. Do you have any concerns about the future for you?
Not for me. I mean, I've got concerns about the future for businesses as a whole. I think some of to go back to talking about 2020 and kind of the work 15 years prior to that, calling it L&D 2020 wasn't prescient. I'm not even sure how to pronounce that in necessarily the ways that people thought. But changes have been accelerated for obvious reasons last year, and so I'd like to focus on the things that are going to change for the positive. But I think there's still a lot to businesses have got a lot to understand about how they're going to operate as businesses, but how they're going to operate as businesses for the people and people's concerns about how and where they want to work and balance and things like that. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty generally, but to come back to a refrain that we've used several times before or in various different ways, there's always been uncertainty, like you said in your final piece. So
yeah,
we'll deal with it.
You can't do anything about it because this is a quote that I don't know how many times I've seen it in articles in 20 years, probably hundreds. Change is the only constant. I think it was Confucius who said that. I think it was.
Who knows?
I don't know. I have to look up. There's so many of these people making these quotes. I think it was Confucius, but
right.
It was some. I think it might have been a Chinese chap a long time ago. So I do think that's we all have to deal with that. And I mean, I worry about my grandchildren and the future, but I look at them and I think, I don't know why I'm worrying, because they'll deal with it, because it's their world, not mine anymore. Not so much anyhow.
Children of the future, as George Benson once sung. Debbie,
my favorite. I know you got to go.
We can carry on, but I was just going to say it's been a pleasure working with you and for you, and thanks for everything you've done for TJ.
Well, I intend to carry on helping it whenever I can. You know that. It's been a joy. I've loved it. Everybody's been so supportive, so wonderfully innovative in their approaches. See all sorts of things over the years. I've met so many lovely people, famous and not famous. Have I met anybody infamous? No, I don't think so. But no, it's been a real privilege, as I said before. I've enjoyed it immensely, and thank you, John, for giving me the opportunity to say goodbye properly.
Well, no problem. I'm sure we'll be talking in a couple of days anyway, but for now, it's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.